Cheers. If you can imagine what it's like to, one of those really hot days when you're playing sport and you're so thirsty, and you just pick up some water and you just guzzle it. That's what grace is like to the soul. Now, last week we looked at Calvinism and Arminianism. We looked at free will and predestination. Church is often split into groupings and streams that are organised around theological ideas with labels that have technical meanings. So we've Calvinist, Arminianist, Reformed, Conservative, Liberal. At Vineyard, we don't want to divide around ideas that in themselves are only true when held in tension with other understandings. Hence the quest for the radical middle. So the middle being that middle ground, not polarising, not going one way or the other, but staying in the middle. And it's a hard place to hold. It's difficult to hold that ground, hence the word radical. So it's a radical middle. And it's both and that helps us hold that ground. We don't need to reject one for the other. We can say yes to both. So another area of tension where we keep the tension, which helps us shoot our arrow straight or play tuneful music on our instrument of life. Another area is around grace and law. When the Israelites prepared to enter the promised land, God gave Moses the law, the 10 Commandments, and then expanding it to include moral and ceremonial and civil laws. And the instruction was, if you follow them, you'll experience blessing, but if you depart from them, you will experience the curse of living outside of God's best for the whole nation of Israel and actually for the whole world. And Jesus came and started teaching and gave some fresh teaching specifically on those laws and how they apply. He was taking the principles behind them and explaining how they applied to the people that he was preaching to in their context. But he was also upholding the law. He said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 to 20, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one iota, not a dot, will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." And the Mosaic law that was given to the Israelites was to guide righteous living, and it was to reveal sin. It acts as a tutor for people to be led to Christ. Galatians 3:24 says, "Before the coming of this faith, we were held in custody under the law, locked up until the faith that was to come would be revealed." So the law was our guardian until Christ came, that we might be fully justified by faith. Works alone we cannot hope to use to fulfill the law. We can't fulfill the law by just trying our hardest. What happens is we realise that we're lost without God's grace revealed to us in Jesus. Romans chapter 5 explains that we have justification through faith in Jesus, that we're forgiven for our sins for breaking the law, and we're saved by grace. Grace is the unmerited favour of God. It offers forgiveness and salvation as a gift, not earned by works. It means that there's nothing that you could do that will make God love you any less, and there's nothing that you could do that will make him love you any more. And that's why it's like water to a thirsty person. It's a beautiful thing. It's one that works out inside all of us and transforms us from the inside out into the likeness of Jesus. Will grace then lead us to not make any effort because it's all a gift? There's nothing we can do to earn it. So are we just going to sit on our backsides from now on? Jesus' brother, James, addressed this in his book, called after him, the Book of James, and he said that faith without works is dead. It's not real. So as Christians, we live in this tension. We receive God's grace as a gift, and we resist falling back into toxic religion that makes us try and earn God's favour by our efforts, and also judging others in the same way. But whilst we try and avoid falling back into toxic religion that tries to make us earn our faith, we also don't want to fall onto the other side, falling for cheap grace, taking grace for granted. I sometimes see grace as a water spout of life. Following the water theme once again, we can either choose to position ourselves under it, or we can move we can move away from the water spout. And we position ourselves under it by doing the three elements of discipleship, as I've mentioned before, being with Jesus, doing the things that Jesus did, and becoming like Jesus. So the three elements of discipleship. And by doing those things, that's really positioning ourselves under the water spout of God's grace. And it leads us into this adventure of spiritual practices, learning to pray, for instance, seeing God move in our circumstances, opening ourselves up to his word and starting to learn it and get to know it. And then sharing that word with the people around us. And as we try and adapt the teachings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount into our own lives, and we try and adopt what he teaches us to do, and we try to follow those directives, then we fall on our knees, acknowledging our sin and hopelessness, because we can't possibly do it under our own strength. And that's where we start calling out for God's mercy and for his salvation. And you see, it's a virtuous circle. So the more we receive that grace and relish it, the more we want to start to try and follow Jesus and follow his ways and follow his laws. And the more we try and follow Jesus and follow his ways and follow his laws, the more we realise that we just can't do it, and we fall on our knees, calling out for mercy and then receiving the grace again. Put it another way, we don't have to do any of this stuff. We have grace. It's a gift. God loves us just as we are. That's a really important foundation upon which we stand. But if you're in a relationship with somebody and that you love them, do you really want to turn away from them and ignore them? Or do you want to get closer to them? And do you want to work out what you can do that will indeed improve the relationship and make that relationship flourish? You're looking for ways, how can I invest in my relationship and make it flourish? How can I get closer to this person because I love them? And if our sin hurts Jesus, as it does, it makes him sad, don't we then regret doing those things that bring sadness to him, that hurt him? And we therefore want to stop it. We want to stop doing that. So we look to the law then as a gift. It's there to guide us, and it draws closer to God and draw closer to each other. My last word picture is that of a bicycle. A bicycle has two pedals, and you don't really have to work out which pedal to press on, do you? It's the one that's up. So you've got grace and law. You've got grace and law. You press down on the grace pedal and the law pedal pops up, because you want to do things to get closer to Jesus and to invest in your relationship with him. So you do that, and as you press down on the law pedal, the grace pedal comes up. And the more you do it, the faster it goes, and you almost don't realise what pedal you're pressing on. It becomes one. And I think that is the radical middle that we find between grace and law. That when we're pedaling on both of them simultaneously, they become two opposites, become one.